I almost timed it perfectly. Welcome back to the 221st episode. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, how are you? It's nice to see you, kind of. It's been a long time coming, this one, and it's a special one for me because 221, that's not just a number. For obvious reasons. What else? 221 is 221 is a semi-prime. It's the product of 13 times 17, two consecutive prime numbers. It's the sixth smallest such number. It is a brilliant number in mathematics, meaning its prime factors have the same number of digits. Semi-primes are the foundation of RSA encryption, the system that secures most internet communication. 221 is the simplest working example of that structure. 221 BC is the year China unified. Qin Shi Huang ended the Warring States period and became the first emperor of China. The word China comes from Qin. What else? Asteroid 221 is named Eos or Eos, depending upon how you want to pronounce it. It was discovered on the 18th of January, 1882, squarely inside the Conan Doyle era. 221 in Roman numerals is CCXXI. The phone dialing prefix plus 221 is Senegal. 221 reduces to 5 in numerology, 2 plus 2 plus 1. That's associated with curiosity, with adaptability, and freedom of expression, not just the worst set of traits for a deductionist podcast. In binary, 221 is 11011101. Right, so for anyone who spent any time in the world of Sherlock Holmes, it means something. 221B, Baker Street. This episode is very much 221A. More on that later. 221B is the address. It's the legend. It's the place where it all happens. And here we are, 221 episodes of the Deductionist podcast. Right now, I'll be honest with you. I never intended to really do a look back episode. That's not really my style. I tend to look forwards. There is always another idea, another angle, another piece of behaviour to unpick. But when you hit 221 and you are a Sherlock Holmes podcast, you'd be a fool not to stop. Even Holmes occasionally took a moment to review the case file. So this is really what today is. 221A. It's the review. It's the debrief. It's a chance to look really at what we've built together, what we've learned, what resonated, and what that whole experience has really been about. And I say together deliberately, because this podcast has never really been just me talking into various microphones and into various cameras, right? It's just been built off the back of your questions, your reactions, the moments where something landed. Those shape this podcast as much as anything I ever planned. So in a real sense, this look back, it kind of belongs to both of us. We will get to 221B. That's where we look forward. But first, we take a look at what's been. Opening the case file. If you want to make a point of really where it all started, it was with the is brainy really the new sexy? Way back when. If you want to understand what this podcast was always trying to do, go back to one of the earliest episodes. It sounds like a kind of pop psychology clickbait infused headline, but it contained the whole thesis of the show. Right? What I was really asking was, has intelligence, genuine, applied, curious intelligence become something people aspire to again? Or has it been replaced by a performance of intelligence, of confidence without comprehension, of opinions without evidence? And that tension between actually thinking and appearing to think, that's really been the thread that's running through every single episode since. And here's what I've come to understand about that tension. The performance of intelligence isn't just a kind of harmless vanity. It can be actively dangerous. So when you mistake the appearance of reasoning for actual reasoning, you stop checking your conclusions. You stop asking what you might have missed. You start defending a position instead of interrogating it. And the smarter you are, the better you get at doing exactly that. Jonathan Haidt's research on moral reasoning it's a wonderful read, first of all, and goes into most of what we call thinking is just post hoc rationalization. We reach a conclusion emotionally and then construct the argument in reverse. The intelligence is real. The reasoning, that's theatre. Sherlock Holmes is not interesting because he's smart. He's interesting because he applies it. He does something with his mind. He catches himself. He questions his own assumptions before anyone else gets the chance. That's the discipline that this show has always been trying to teach, not intelligence as identity. It's been a kind of intelligence as practice. If you want to understand where this whole deductionist podcast method rant humor thing started, that early episode could be argued is the foundation. Not the techniques so much, not the human behavior, not the memory systems, just the question that sits beneath it all. Are you actually thinking, or are you just acting it out? And then we get into the big stuff, the observation and deduction. In the early days, the central question was deceptively simple. How do you actually see what others miss? Oh, we spent a lot of time on that. We spent a lot of time on that. There was the Think Like Sherlock, True Skills of Sherlock Holmes. We split that into two parts just because there was so much to cover. And then even the Sherlock level deduction of today, the inference cycle, all of them circling the same idea. And the uncomfortable truth we keep landing on is this: most people aren't inherently bad at observation because they lack intelligence. They're bad at it because they've never been trained to do it deliberately. The brain is a prediction machine. That's not a metaphor. That's the framework for it. Your visual cortex isn't passively receiving input from the world. It's constantly generating a model of what it expects to be, what it expects to see, what it expects to be there, and then comparing the incoming signal against that model. When something matches the prediction, the brain barely registers it. When something violates it, though, you get a jolt of attention. It's efficient, yeah, but it's also the reason you can look directly at something and not see it. Daniel Kahneman, if you've ever read Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. He mapped it as the difference between System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 being fast, automatic pattern matching. It's running constantly, and it's brilliant at recognizing what it's seen before. System 2, however, deliberate, effortful. Sherlock Holmes is doing system 2 work in environments where everyone else is on autopilot. It's not a superpower, even though it seems like one. It's not magical, even though it seems like one. It is just a trained habit. And the training starts with one simple instruction: slow down, and then ask what is actually here, rather than what you assume is here. Quick question. When was the last time you trusted your memory? But your memory without checking a device. Most people don't lose intelligence. They lose discipline of attention. MindForge is a structured training system that is designed to rebuild focus, recall, and your mental stamina, but to do so in just 10 minutes a day. No productivity hacks, no dopamine tricks, no supplements you need to swallow, just cognitive conditioning. So if you want your mind to feel sharper within a week, omniscient-insights.com/mindforge, or right there. Train your mind like it matters. The inference cycle episode built on it by introducing the idea that deduction is not a single act. And I'm not going to deal with the whole deduction, induction, abduction discussion, but it's more of a loop. You observe, you form a hypothesis, you look for what would falsify the hypothesis, you revise, and around and around and around we go. Most people stop after the first hypothesis. Holmes keeps going. That's the difference between That's the difference between a guess and an inference. And it's a difference any investigator can close. The fun ones we went to afterwards were things like the memory stuff, building the mind palaces from the ground up. Like if observation is the input, memory is the storage. And we went deep on this MFA. How to create a memory palace episodes, chunking up your memory, unlocking ancient memory techniques, the Anthony Mativi. Just seen that, Pascal? You should never use the G word. And he's right. You shouldn't. Pascal's in my RLS family, and we have a heightened awareness for the G word. It's like swearing. But then we also went on to the Anthony Mativier interview. That's one of my favorite conversations that the show has produced. The magnetic memory novels that he's put out. They're fun. They are fun. I'm going to do some reviews on them soon. I've got some collaborative stuff in the works with Mr. Mativier himself. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But we also did Stoicism Secrets for a Perfect Memory and the Aphantasia episode with Daniel the Freak Johnson. It's genuinely changed the way that people think about this subject. I'll take that, Pascal. Thanks, mate. The best course ever. Memory is one of the most understood skills in the human toolkit. People believe it's fixed, like some kind of capacity that you either have or you don't, like a kind of lottery almost. That belief, that opinion about yourself and your memory, it's not just wrong. I mean, it is wrong, but it's not just wrong. It's functioning as an excuse. Memory is a skill with 2,000-year-old evidence behind it. I mean, it does go back further as well. Tens of thousands of years. But there's less evidence the further back you go, obviously. For more on that, you can look at Lynn Kelly's work. The method of loci, the technique Holmes calls his mind palace, was documented by Cicero in De Oratore. Roman orators used it to memorize hours of unscripted speech. It works because the brain encodes spatial and sensory information more reliably than abstract verbal information. You are not fighting your memory's limitations when you use it. You are just working with the systems that it already has. Nelson Cowan's research on working memory showed that we can hold roughly four chunks of information in active attention at any one time. I mean, the critical word is chunk. A chunk is not a unit. It's a category. If you go for an experienced investigator who spent years building these kinds of associative frameworks, can carry vastly more information in those four slots than a novice, because each chunk is denser. The Mind Palace system creates a framework, a building block for denser chunks. Now, the aphantasia episode, it changed something for a lot of folks, from what I heard, anyway, because it forced the question of what happens when the visual component of that system it isn't there. Right? Some people can't generate voluntary mental imagery at all. There's some research from Zeman in 2015 confirming this as a genuine neurological variant, not some kind of imaginative failure. And what we went into in that episode was just the principles of memory encoding, association, distinctiveness, emotional salience, spatial anchoring. They don't have to depend on visualization. They can be adapted, which means the system is even more robust than anyone had first assumed. For the investigator, the practical payoff means the information that you can't retrieve is information you effectively don't have. Building the memory system is not it's not an academic exercise. It's the difference between evidence that is available, and evidence that is lost. And we did quite a few episodes on body language and nonverbal communication and the science in reading people. And if I'm being honest, this is the bit that gets people. This is the thing that makes someone say, I've just found this podcast and I can't stop listening. It's reading people. From the early episodes we did on body language and nonverbal communication through these kind of big cultural breakdowns, like the Amber Heard trial, the election stuff in America and the UK, Harry and Meghan, through to the more scientifically grounded work in season 3 with the language of behaviour, reading people without the G word, and why everything you think about liars is wrong. And that last title, that's a big one, because it is the corrective that this field desperately needs. The popular mythology around body language is almost entirely wrong. Crossed arms means defensiveness. Eye contact means honesty. A handshake tells you who someone is. These rules are simple. They are memorable. They feel true, but they're also not supported by the evidence. You look at Bella DePaulo's meta-analysis that covered decades of deception research and thousands of participants. They found that untrained observers detect deception at a rate of roughly 54%, barely above chance. Now, what that number tells you is not that the people are bad at reading people, it's that they are reading the wrong signals, with the wrong framework. The science tells us something more demanding, that baseline behavior matters. You can't assess deviation without knowing what's normal for this person in this context. Clusters matter. I should put that on a t-shirt. A single signal is almost meaningless. What you're looking for is the patterns that don't fit, signals that appear together, responses that are inconsistent with the narrative. Context matters above everything. The same behavior that signals anxiety in one setting signals genuine distress in another. In your own emotional state, your assumptions, your prior beliefs about the person, they are actively distorting your perception before you've even started looking. The goal of those episodes was never to produce a human lie detector. It was to produce a more careful observer, someone who looks before they conclude, someone who knows what they know, and more importantly, knows what they don't know. That humility shouldn't ever be considered a weakness. It is the most accurate position available to you, given the state of the evidence. And this moved us on to critical thinking. Now, most of the times when I say this out loud, if you don't really know what critical thinking is, or you've never taken part of it, or you've never taken a study of it, most people tend to go, God, boring. But this one is close to my heart, probably too close, if you've listened to some of these rants before. We did how to spot logical flaws. We did the death of reason, the curse of cleverness, why smart minds fall for dumb ideas, flawed logic, the internet, and Nicola Bulley. This has been a recurring thread because I think it's the most urgent one. We are drowning in information and starving for thinking. Anyone can publish anything. I'm doing it now. I'm doing it now. Algorithms reward the confidence of the conclusion over the quality of the reasoning. And the people who sound most certain are very often the ones who've thought about it the least. The Nicola Bulley case is really worth naming directly, because what that episode was really about wasn't the case at hand. It was more a live study of how online communities reason under uncertainty. The conditions were limited evidence, high emotional investment, social incentive to even have an opinion, and an audience. Under those conditions, what happens to the reasoning process? It just collapses into a hodgepodge of confirmation biases. People found the signal that matched the conclusion they had already found and then stopped looking. Every piece of evidence that contradicted the narrative got reclassified as a distraction or a cover-up. The investigation was over before it began. The Sherlockian corrective is not to become emotionless. You can't. You're a human. And Holmes is not emotionless. He's disciplined. He cares about the outcome. He feels the pull of a satisfying theory. He just refuses to let that pull do his thinking for him. That distinction that Kahneman draws between fast and slow thinking is really useful here. But the deeper point is about metacognition. We covered this in year 3. It's the ability to observe your own reasoning process while it's happening. To catch yourself constructing a narrative and ask, does this evidence actually support it? Or whether you are working backwards from a conclusion that you've already just fallen in love with. For the investigator, this is some foundational shit. Tunnel vision in an investigation doesn't just mean that you miss the real answer. It means that you may actively build a case against someone who is innocent. Because every new piece of information gets filtered through the lens of what you already believe. The antidote, not more intelligence. It's a deliberate practice of falsification, as in, what would have to be true for me to be wrong? That question, asked early and asked often, one of the most powerful tools in your entire quiver. Then we also did some episodes on major headlines, major events, cultural breakdowns, this type of thing. The more memorable episodes of the podcast, they weren't planned months in advance. They were responses to things happening in the world. Amber and Johnny, we did several episodes on that, including one that ran to 3 hours and 23 minutes. I make no apologies for that. There was a lot to analyze. Then there was the anti-body language of the election, Harry and Meghan. The most recent manosphere's a logic problem. These episodes matter for a few reasons. They show that the deductionist skill set isn't just theoretical. It applies right now, every day, in real time, to real events. Real events that people actually care about, and they kind of inform, around people who might not have even heard of the method of loci or Kahneman's dual process theory, but also people who are genuinely curious about what is actually happening in a courtroom or a press conference when everyone else is just shouting their own certainty. There is almost a degree of responsibility that comes with those episodes because they're real things. The easiest thing to do with a high-profile case is produce the analysis the audience already wants. Find any major body language guru. That's what you'll find. It's to confirm the popular read, to find the signal in the noise that supports the narrative everyone's already settled on. Then you've got guaranteed coverage. The Amber Heard coverage was dominated by people who had already decided and were shopping for evidence. You got it. You got it. One of the best, Pascal says, one of the best tools is to prove that the hypothesis is wrong. If we can prove it's wrong, then we can change the hypothesis. Absolutely, my friend. It's like a simplistic way of explaining the scientific method. How do you prove that something is? Try and prove that it isn't. The best of those episodes, I think, purely my opinion, were the ones that complicated the picture rather than flattened it. So ones where we named the limits of what body language analysis can actually tell you in a legal context, where we acknowledge that stress, fear, deception, they produce overlapping signals, and that distinguishing between them requires a huge degree of baseline data that most observers simply don't have. Now, that's not a popular position when everyone around you is just so certain, but it is the only accurate one. And accuracy is arguably the whole point. Right? We can even talk data for a moment, moving on. Looking at the most popular episodes, because the numbers, I think, are quite interesting. And they tell you something important about who we are as podcast listeners. The most downloaded episode from the recent seasons is From Gut Feeling to Cold Logic, Think Like an Analyst. Right behind it was The Language of Behaviour, Reading People Without Guessing. Curiosity and Deduction, Sharpening Conversation. Observation and Critical Thinking, Why Everything You Think About Liars Is Wrong, was also up there. It's kind of like a top 5. I should have got the top 10 noise from Top of the Pops in the UK. It's just occurred to me now. That would have been a great little sound effect to have. The pattern across all of them is the same. It's practical, science-backed, skills you can take out of the episode and apply immediately. Not mythology, not entertainment per se, but actual transferable tools. So here's what the data tells me on this side. The download numbers, they're not just vanity metrics. I mean, it's nice that anyone does, of course, but they are behavioral evidence, right? You guys that found this show and stayed weren't looking purely for content about Sherlock Holmes. You were looking for a methodology. That came in through the Holmes framing, and then most people stayed because underneath it there was genuine science, genuine kind of intellectual rigor, and a consistent commitment to giving you something that you could actually use. I can't believe how long ago you started these podcasts. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while, mate. A labor of love, as they say. Sam Gosling's research on media consumption and personality, it shows that what people choose to engage with repeatedly is a reliable indicator of stable trait patterns. So people who seek out skill-based content over purely informational content tend to score higher on openness to experience and conscientiousness. Right? So they aren't passive consumers, they are builders. They are trying to construct something either in themselves or for something else. Carol Riff's work on psychological well-being consistently shows that personal growth and autonomy are among the highest rated dimensions of a life well lived. So the audience of this podcast, it's not here for a distraction. It's I mean, Lord knows you can't listen to me for a distraction. It's about development. Now that's no small thing to understand. No small thing to understand about anyone, least of all a group of people that I've never actually met. Now there is a version of this podcast that existed in season 1 that I wouldn't make today. Now it's not because it's bad. I love those early episodes. They were genuinely hilarious. But it's because the show's kind of grown up. And more honestly, because I'm trying to. I always said that the first 40 years of childhood will be the best, and I turned 40 in a couple of months. So it's maybe about time. Season 1, I nearly said it like Sean Connery then. Season 1. Season 1 was passionate and exploratory. Episodes ran 60, 70, 90 minutes. There were tangents. There was a lot of following the thread wherever it went and seeing where it ended up. It had enormous energy. The Holmesian methodology, that's always been the framing. But to me, it really hadn't become the engine. Season 2 was a deliberate reset. I wanted to rebuild the framework with more intention, to be clearer about what a deductionist actually is and what a deductionist actually needs. So the episodes from that season was how to be Sherlock Holmes, the practical skills of Sherlock, the fictional skills of Sherlock. They read almost like a kind of course content that way, right? There was a burgeoning curriculum, and that curriculum was built on a clearer understanding of the research, which one can only do through continuing development. Observation is a trainable cognitive skill, memory as an engineering problem, deception detection as a probabilistic discipline, rather than some kind of intuitive art. Here's the truth. Clarity under pressure isn't natural. It's trained. Axiom is a cognitive framework, one that is designed to improve your reasoning, to improve your memory, and then the subsequent decision-making that goes along with that. Not theory-focused, not just inspirational quotes, mental architecture. So if you want to think clearly and do so when it counts, go to omniscient-insights.com/axiom, or right there, because in chaos, the clear thinker wins. Season 3 has fast become the synthesis. You know, it's the rigor of season 2 with the ambition of season 1, covering neurodivergence, AI, game theory, music psychology, global emotional data. But we are still always asking this same core question. What does it mean to think and observe and connect like a deductionist? And critically, what does the science say about that? Because there's so much bullshit, so much pseudoscience, so much popularized YouTube channel ridiculousness. If you look at what Carol Dweck's growth mindset research reveals about the kind of intellectual revision that season 2, in my opinion, tried to represent, it's that the willingness to discard what is no longer serving you and rebuild on better foundations is itself the mark of the developing mind. The show didn't change its soul. It just got better at expressing it. You know, we had one of these conversations in the RLS group about who are you, and it's popular. We like to take on fun questions, whether you can answer them and whether you can't. It's fun to explore them, and my personal theory on that is that the tense, the temporal notion, the framing of the question is false. It's set up to create falsehood. Who are you implies you're done. That question to me can only be answered future-paced. Who I am is about who I'm trying to be tomorrow. And the podcast is trying to figure that out as well as we go. Right? And there's been kind of an not wholly unexpected element, but wholly unplanned element that's come out of this. You know, looking back across the years of episodes, it's apparent as a thread, as a corollary, that I'd been pulling on these ideas without fully realizing it, that we're offloading our humanity one chatbot at a time. The emotional recession that we talked about, 166 countries, just confirms that we're getting we're getting worse at being human. Bringing humanity back to tech, as in, can AI ever understand humans? These episodes landed hard. The emotional recession episode in particular triggered more direct audience response than almost anything we've put out. And I think I understand why. The Gallup data, pretty stark. A global positive emotional experience has been declining for years across the majority of countries that were surveyed. People are reporting less enjoyment, less laughter, less feeling of being treated with respect, less sense of learning something new, right? It's more of a measurement problem. Something is actually changing in the quality of people's daily emotional lives, and it's moving in the wrong direction. Sherry Turkle's research connects to this, right? She called it the flight from conversation. Is this kind of digital interaction almost replaces face-to-face contact. The bandwidth of human connection narrows. You lose the non-verbal channel. You lose the capacity to sit with silence. You lose the reciprocal vulnerability that deep human connection requires. And for the investigator, you lose the perceptual data that only comes from being physically present with another person. If you look at Antonio Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis, it adds something even more fundamental. The assumption that emotion and rational thought are opposed, that the goal of good reasoning is to suppress the emotional signal. It's neurologically backwards. His patients with damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex That's the region that integrates emotional processing with decision making. They don't become more rational. They become incapable of making decisions. So emotion isn't the enemy of clear thinking, it's a prerequisite for it. The investigator who stopped cultivating their emotional intelligence hasn't become more objective. They've become less capable. The deductionist is not an anti-technology position, even though I very often sound like I am. I mean, it doesn't tend to work for me, and that's maybe why. But this is more a pro-human one. And again, most people who know me personally might go, "Really?" I tend to paraphrase Homer Simpson with humans, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. My goal has always been to sharpen the human mind, not replace it. So what 221 episodes has taught me? It's taught me that I can talk a lot. No, let's try and be real before we close out. 221 episodes is a lot. There were times, particularly in the middle seasons, where I wasn't really sure where it was going, and then when Adam left, it was hard. It was hard. And then illness, family stuff, work stuff, chaos. It was whether the audience was finding it, whether the format was right, whether I was saying anything that was actually useful at all, or just pissing in the wind, just making noise. And the honest answer is that I don't know every time. I still don't. But there is an accumulation of this work that's taught me something about the deductionist method itself. The first thing is that the skill set is genuinely unified. Observation, memory, people reading, critical thinking, these aren't four separate disciplines. Oh yeah, I'll take that. That's a wonderful virtue, perseverance. Absolutely. Thank you, Pascal. But yeah, those disciplines, they're not separate. They are part of the same discipline that's just operating at different points in the same process. You observe, you store, you interpret, you question your interpretation, and then you observe again with new information. The moment that you treat any one of these as optional, the whole system degrades. So the investigator that's got sharp observation but no framework for questioning, they'll reach wrong answers confidently. The investigator who understands deception science but has never trained their baseline assessment, they'll be comparing apples to oranges and just inventing a standard. The tools are only as strong as the chain. And the second thing is that science has moved, right? That's why in the UK, the appeals process pretty much doesn't change, because science continually evolves. The appeals process doesn't change. Right? So the science doesn't change in a way that invalidates the earlier work, but it deepens the experience of it. When I first started looking at, I taught it again recently, emotion theory. I mean, we obviously teach the current work on it, but I'm a firm believer that in order to know why this is important, why it works today, you have to know the failures that it's built on, right? And that's never a reason to Merci, Julie. It's never a reason to distrust the science. It's a reason to keep reading it. The deductionist who stopped updating their knowledge base 10 years ago is working from an increasingly out-of-date map. And the third thing, the one I keep coming back to, the questions matter more than the answers. So every episode that's genuinely landed, that you've come back to tell me about in a DM or a comment section or an email or see me in person, right? Something that has sparked something has been built around a question that I didn't fully know the answer to yet. Not a lecture of any kind. I can't. More a search. And Sherlock Holmes is at his best when he is investigating, when he is genuinely uncertain and working towards clarity. So the moment he becomes arrogant and closed-minded, as he does occasionally in the canon, he makes mistakes, right? Asking to be reminded of Norbury in such cases. Expertise isn't the absence of uncertainty. It's the ability to manage uncertainty, but do it well. That's what a deductionist does. And that is what this podcast has always tried to model. Oh, Pascal, bless you. Merci, mon pote. He says, what this podcast has given me is a broader outlook and a fresh perspective. It led me to take part in the best RLS course I've ever done. And I've done plenty. And above all, it's allowed me to get to know Ben and to call him my friend. I mean, that's the courtesy of a bribe well placed. Thank you, my friend. So yeah, 221 episodes. Is brainy really the new sexy? And all of these episodes later, I think the real answer is, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether it's sexy. What matters is whether it's useful. Whether being more observant, being more rational, more curious about other human beings makes your life better, makes your relationships richer, makes your thinking clearer, makes you harder to deceive and easier to trust. I believe it does. And the evidence of this podcast, and more importantly, the evidence of your lives through the stories that you've sent me or told me, the way you apply this in interview rooms, in courtrooms, in living rooms, in streets and outside and with your friends and everywhere else, suggests that it does too. So here is where we are. You know, it's the case so far. You've had the retrospective, you've seen where we started, how we grew, what the science taught us, and what we had to unlearn, but then what we had to relearn along the way, and what we've really been building towards. And then when 221B comes around, we turn the page. New chapter, new questions. Because a deductionist never stops at the last solved case. There is always another door to open. 221B is coming. And I think it might be the most important thing that we've done yet. So to you guys, I say cheers. And until then, keep observing, keep questioning, and please never, ever stop thinking.